Chapter 4, Section 3, Photosynthesis in Detail. The key concept is that photosynthesis requires a series of chemical reactions. The first stage of photosynthesis captures and transfers energy. Light energy is absorbed by pigments. White light is mostly absorbed by the chlorophyll A and B molecules along with the accessory pigments. That light energy is then converted in the photosystems into chemical energy. Here we can see the light energy coming in as that yellow arrow. The carbon dioxide is coming in down here later on. The water molecules are entering into the thylakoids. The oxygen is being produced right here. And then our sugar, again later, we'll see that coming out of the Calvin cycle. Light enters photosystem 2 on the thylakoid membrane and excites the electrons. The excited electron then enter the primary electron acceptor, which gives electrons to the electron transport chain, which is just a series of proteins embedded on the thylakoid membrane, and it passes excited electrons from molecule to molecule. This action moves the hydrogen protons into the thylakoid. The splitting of a water molecule is what keeps the available supply of electrons and protons in the thylakoid area. The byproduct, or waste here, is water. Here we can see that diagram of photosystem 2 and the electron transport chain. So energy is absorbed, it hits the chlorophyll molecule, it accepts the electrons that came from that water molecule that was split. The hydrogen protons are transported across the thylakoid membrane, and they build up a potential energy in there that's going to fuel the creation of the ATP synthase later on. Next, more light. It strikes photosystem 1 now, and again the excited electrons go into the primary electron acceptor, followed by the ETC of photosystem 1, which ends with the NADP plus reducing to form NADPH. NADPH and ATP together will fuel the next part of photosynthesis. Remember, the difference between photosystem 2 and photosystem 1 is just the length of the wavelengths of light that they will accept. Photosystem 2 is capturing the blues and the purples, and photosystem 1 is capturing the reds, the oranges, and the yellows, so the shorter wavelengths. Here we see the NADP plus turning into NADPH, so it's going from an energy grocery cart that's empty. We're filling it up with energy, so now it's full, ready to be moved on to the next section. There's all those hydrogen protons that we just pumped into the thylakoid, and now we have to push them out, and that energy is what's going to make the ATP synthase turn ADP into ATP. And these two molecules, ATP and NADPH, are the goal of the entire light reaction system, so both photosystems. The light-dependent reactions produce ATP. ATP synthase adds a phosphate group to an ADP to make the ATP. And that NADPH and ATP are what's going to fuel the next part. Here we can see 3 different representations of that ATP synthase. Remember, it ends in ASE, which means it's an enzyme. The second stage is also called the Calvin cycle. You may hear it called the light-independent reactions, and you may also occasionally hear it called the dark reactions. The Calvin cycle is fueled by the NADPH and the ATP that we just made. It's occurring in the stroma, which is that fluid portion of the chloroplast that surrounds those thylakoids. This is where we're going to take the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. It's going to diffuse into the cell, into the thylakoid, into the stroma. 2 turns of this Calvin cycle is going to produce 1 glucose molecule. A molecule of glucose is formed as it stores some of that energy captured from sunlight. Carbon dioxide molecules enter the Calvin cycle. The energy is added and carbon molecules are rearranged, because remember, that's all we really do with carbon or with chemical reactions. We're simply rearranging atoms. And we end up with a high energy 3 carbon molecule that's going to leave the cycle. So 3 carbon molecule, 2 turns of the cycle will give us that 6 carbon sugar we're trying to get to. Each turn of the Calvin cycle produces that 3 carbon sugar. It produces 1 glucose, which is a 6 carbon sugar, and as you can see, there's quite a few intermediate molecules that are formed by processes along the way. Luckily, I'm not going to ask you to tell me the names of each of those intermediate molecules. You just need to understand that we go through this process to build a 3 carbon sugar. We do it twice, and we get that 6 carbon glucose. Mainly, I want you to know that the carbon dioxide that's coming into this cycle comes from the atmosphere. Some variations on photosynthesis. There's C4 photosynthesis. What we've been studying is C3 photosynthesis. It fixes carbon dioxide into a 4 carbon sugar and releases it for later photosynthesis. The advantage, it allows photosynthesis to occur when the stomata are closed, like when it's really hot, like in the desert. Some examples would be like sugarcane and crabgrass. CAM plants, or crassulacean acid metabolism plants, fix carbon dioxide into organic acids at night, making it available for photosynthesis to occur during the day. The advantage is it allows those stomata to close during the day. That's beneficial for plants in very hot, arid areas because it prevents water loss. The disadvantages is it's not very efficient, and so plant growth is very slow, like cactus. The rate of photosynthesis is dependent on several things. Most importantly is light intensity. The rate of photosynthesis will increase with light intensity to a point, and then levels off when reactions reach their maximum level. Temperature, the rate will actually increase to a point and then drop off drastically when it gets too hot. Cold temperatures will just slow down the enzymatic rate. So that Calvin cycle that's occurring is very dependent on enzymes. And if you remember back, we talked about how enzymes are temperature specific. And then obviously the availability of CO2. The more CO2, the more photosynthesis, to a point. So 3 down, when you get to your crossword, the word that you're looking for is photophosphorylation. And you'll know when you need it. Here's a little light humor. What did one hungry plant say to the other plant? I could use a light snack.